Now, the third would be God won't violate the freedom of other people. So I have prayed with people whose spouses divorced them and the heartbreak or cheated on them or whatever it might be. And there are times when we're so grieving and so hurting, we just pray, God, please change their heart. Please bring them back. I want you to bring my spouse back, my husband or my wife back. And that's not how it works. God isn't going to force somebody to come back to you against their will. And this is true in a lot of areas of life. So I think about people who have been trying to sell their houses. And I've known people, lots of people who prayed and prayed, God, I need to sell this house. I need to get this much money out of it. And the last 2 years it's been easy to sell houses, but it's not always been that way. And I remember, I've known multiple people who've taken a statue of St. Joseph, put it face down or head down, by their realtor signs or by the front door, I can't remember where you're supposed to do this, and expecting that God is going to bring them somebody to their house to buy their house for the price they want to sell it for. But if that's the case, then God is manipulating someone else because of your prayers, making them do something that may not be in their best interest. And so, God isn't going to force somebody to overpay for your house because you need to sell it at that price. What we have to do is set a fair we're going to hope that somebody, we're going to even pray, Lord, for whom would this house be a blessing? And I pray that they might find out from their realtor about this house and that they would see it as the place that would be the home of their dreams. Like, that's a good thing to pray, but not, God, make somebody buy my house at this price if it's not the right price for the house or not the right house for them. Anyway, you get the idea that I'm sharing. So that leads me to another big idea when it comes to prayer, and that is something called ora et labora. That's a Latin phrase that comes from at least the 6th century. St. Benedict, it was part of his rule for his monasteries. It means pray and work. And so ora et labora, pray and work. The idea was at the monastery, we're not just praying all the time, we're also going to be working. But I think it had a broader application than that. And the idea is that we pray and then we get off our knees and we go about doing something to help fulfill that prayer. Right? Prayer tunes our heart to the thing that we're asking for. And as it tunes our heart to it, we're meant to get off our knees. We're meant to go to work. We roll up our sleeves and say, okay, I'm going to help. What can I do? So, it's not enough to pray for people to have food who are hungry. Like we often do that. We'll hear people, oh, Lord, as I thank you for this food and I pray for those people who don't have enough food to eat. Well, great. Except for we're called to not just pray for somebody to have enough food to eat. We're called to go give them food. We're called to do something. So I think about James in his epistle in chapter 2, and I want to share this verse with you. We read these words. James says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if a person claims to have faith, but they have no deeds? And almost like if they pray, but they don't do anything. So he says, suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to him or her, go, I wish you well, keep warm and be well fed. In other words, I'll pray for you. Right? But they don't do anything about their physical needs. What good is that? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. And so when we're praying, that prayer is meant to tune our hearts towards doing something about it. Now, we can't cure somebody's cancer, but when we pray for them, we can come alongside them and we say, you know what, I'm going to mow your yard. Or I'm going to do your dishes, or I'm going to bring food over to your house, or whatever it might be. But we have a chance to come alongside people that we're praying for, and we're meant to do that. And here's a really important point. Is most of the time, the way God works in the world is not by sending angels with wings. It's not by miraculously suspending the laws of nature to bring healing or to help someone else. As much as we want that, can you imagine if miracles happened all the time? We'd have no hospitals, no doctors, no nurses, no researchers. We wouldn't need any of that. We wouldn't need life insurance or anything else. We just all pray for, whatever it is we needed, and we'd get it. But that is not how the world works. How God designed the world to work is for human beings to be engaged in taking care of things, in managing, in stewarding, and in bringing healing or hope or help. That's how God works. God uses us as instruments of healing for other people. And it may not be a miracle that happens, but it may be coming alongside and sustaining people. So I think about years ago, I went on a mission trip to Malawi, a little sliver of a country in South Central Africa. And we'd gone, there was a team of about, I think, 8 or 10 of us. And we'd gone believing God was calling us, God wanted us to be in Malawi for some reason. We needed to go see what could our congregation do. So we went to this little village out, in the hinterlands. We took a van out in dirt roads to get there. And we were told, well, this is a place that might need some help. And so, we met with the tribal chiefs there and we said, we're from America, we're a part of a church, and we've just been praying. We felt like we were supposed to come here, and we've been praying, God, help us to see what we can do to come alongside these people here. And the tribal chief said, it's funny that you should say that because we've been praying that God would bring us someone who could help us have clean drinking water. And they took us to the place where they had this dirty water, this pit of dirty water that they were using. Their kids getting distended bellies and, sick and some of them dying. And we're like, we think that you're the answer to our prayer. God, guide us to know what we should do. And they said, we think you're the answer to our prayers of somebody who can come and help. And we drilled our first borehole or well in this little community out in the wasteland, really. And from there, we've drilled, I think, 150 boreholes across Malawi. So 150 villages that have access to clean drinking water. And here's what happened. We became the answer to these folks' prayers. But in the process, we were looking for a way to make a difference and be God's hands and voice. They became the answer to our prayers. And this is how it works most often. And so when somebody, a family here in Kansas City is praying, God, we don't have enough to eat, and our kids are going hungry over the weekend, and they're praying that, well, we have the opportunity to be the answer to that prayer. By the way, this weekend, we kick off our Super Bowl food drive. And as we do that, we're inviting you to give. You can either bring food. So those of you who live in Kansas City, you can bring food by. If you're at one of our locations, you can take sacks as you're walking out the door today. You'll hear more about this at the end of the service. If you are outside of Kansas City or you can't bring groceries here, then you can give online. And you'll be able to do that. I'll tell you how at the very end of the service. But here's what happens. When you feel moved to do that, you become the answer to someone else's prayer as opposed to you simply praying, God, please help those people have enough to eat. This is how God works most of the time. Ora et labora, we pray and we work. So then we might ask this question, so what does prayer even do? Like if God isn't going to miraculously intervene, why should we even pray? And what does this look like? And I'll just tell you, over the past 32 years, as your pastor, I have prayed for tens of thousands of people. And I think most of the time, I feel like my prayers have been answered. Not always exactly how I prayed them, but most of the time I feel like there's something that's happened in response to those prayers. I can't prove that. I can just say that what I'd asked for ended up happening in some way. And of course, there have been critical times where that didn't happen and where I found myself, again, lying flat on my face on the ground, pleading with people, prostrating myself before God, pleading for people, and they still died despite that. So maybe, the issue is something about what God actually does in prayer, and maybe it's something about our expectations. So I think about this. Several years ago, I posted something about prayer on Facebook, and one person said this. He said, God is not a divine vending machine where we slip in a prayer and out pops a miracle. Another wrote, maybe thinking of prayer as something that needs to be answered is asking the wrong question. Maybe prayer is something like entering into a relationship or yielding our lives to God. Maybe it's less of a transaction and more of an investment or even a communion.